This program is designed to provide general information with regards to the subject matters covered. This information is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, sponsors, or station are engaged in rendering any specific and personal, medical, financial, legal, counseling, professional service, or any advice. You should seek the services of competent professionals before applying or trying any suggested ideas.
Good morning, truth seekers and true crime junkies. Welcome back to another episode of Hit the Road Jack, Finding the Zodiac. We have a lot of great things to share with you today, and we're going to actually step into some of the DC Freeway Phantom items and where Jack is. I want to first welcome Nolan Del Campo to the show.
Good morning, Nanette.
And then also Terry Batcher.
And good afternoon, at least my time.
Good morning.
Thank you.
It's already been one of those days. How are you guys' weeks going?
Very good.
Busy.
To say the least. I'm going to actually throw up the PowerPoint presentation. I had some interesting information I wanted to show this week. As everyone knows, I am taking graphology courses, learning about personality and behavioral trading through handwriting. I made it through the 10th lesson out of 20, which gave me my second mini certificate. And the first lesson in the second half of the series happens to be on signatures. And lo and behold, just about everybody we were talking about in regards to signatures is actually in this particular lesson. So I thought it was extremely interesting to bring this up because as we go through these cases, and we look at Jack's signature, it changes from J.W. Terrence to Jack W. Terrence to Jack Walker Terrence to John W. Terrence to John Walker Terrence to John Barnett or Jack Barnett. Like he uses so many variations of names. To me, and what I've learned so far states that he doesn't even have an identity, and he is many different people with each of these personas. One of the things that they were talking about in here is the way a person actually writes their name when they sign it. And if somebody does something like we see up here at the top, it says Millicent, Molly, Mandy. So if they use all three names completely written out, it has a behavioral psychology behind it. So it says people who write their name in full often seek and enjoy high visibility. Martin Luther King, William Randolph Hearst, Edgar Allan Poe, James Earl Jones. These individuals use words well, tend to make a good impression on others, and enjoy being center stage. We got Randolph Hearst right up in the middle of it. Woo!
Yep.
The note says the ultimate in high visibility or fame is, of course, reflected when only one name is used with royalty. Instant recognition is implied. So when somebody deliberately chooses to use only one name, e.g. Liberace, Prince, we can assume an even greater need for recognition and adulation. While it's true that performers have a public image which they have to maintain, there has to be enormous ego involvement here. Even Elizabeth Taylor, possibly one of the best known celebrities in the world, doesn't introduce herself or sign her name as Taylor. What a concept. So you think about Madonna, all the big showboaters who, So in these particular samples I have to the left here is actually starting with Nancy Reagan's signature. And if you look from one signature to the next, they absolutely look nothing alike. Would you guys agree?
Nothing alike.
Her ends are even backwards. I was a little astonished to see this. It doesn't allude to what the time frame is between these, like I'm going to talk about with Nixon's signature, but it does say sample B, but we could say that about Nancy Reagan. These changes are so remarkable that it is difficult to accept that they were indeed written by the same woman. Slant,
Right.
pressure, thickness, lower zone length, loops, expansion, and actual letter formations are all dissimilar. We really do have a very different person here, no doubt about it. So this could be
at the time.
What's that?
I wonder how old Nancy was at the time. That looks like Yossi Reagan.
I know. It's a very odd construction, and she's doing things backwards, so it might allude to how her
Backwards or
brain.
slanted back.
Yeah. Well, yes, there's a leftward slant instead of forward, so it's almost as if she's become a completely different person. And I see that kind of stuff happening when there's some type of neurological disorder in handwriting, but I don't see really disorder other than just seeing things written backwards. I mean, who makes their N look like their Y?
Right.
Yep. And
Crazy.
with Nixon
All right.
and the other one, you can see the similarities. You can see it's still their signature. With Nancy Reagan, it looks so different.
So different. So, and they do say that graphology is about the time and space in which you write. So during that time frame, when you write is really kind of representative of your personality at that time. So I don't know what she was going through, and I don't know what the time differences are between these two signatures, but I'll give you kind of an idea of what we've got going on with Richard Nixon's just below. So sample C, Richard Nixon's name will forever be associated with the Watergate scandal. Notice the threadedness of the handwriting, and what they're talking about is where he draws these straight lines out. And we can even kind of see it here in this earlier 1974 signature. He started to go threaded, and then in 1974, it is just a line. He has nothing of his personality.
He's done by then.
Yep. So it says, notice
He's
the threadedness
out of office, he's done.
Says, notice the thread. What's that?
Pritchard Nixon.
Right.
Anybody would think it was Pritchard Nixon or something like that. Pritchard
Yeah.
Nixon.
Well, okay. So it says, notice the threadedness of the writing and think about the characteristics associated with it. Here we see the gradual disintegration of a personality. In the early 74 sample, notice the protective stroke over the first name. So he backflows this from his last name over as a protective nature atop his personal name, which is Richard. So how you write your first name is how you feel about yourself, and how you write your last name is how you feel about your family. So he is using his family to cover and protect him basically at this point. So the protective stroke over the first name as more and more information surfaces, then the final signature. He submits his resignation in the late 1974 signature, and there is virtually nothing left. Compare this final signature to the one above it. What energy left has been applied to use to cross himself out. So basically, whenever somebody draws straight through their name, you're crossing yourself out.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
I always wondered why he didn't fight it, but I think he said he lost his political base. That's why he quit.
Oh, he was a puppet. He was put in the position he was put in, and then he was the fall guy for whatever happened.
Right.
So that gets into one of the fall guys, right? That gets us into Mussolini's signature, and I thought this one was even more telling. So before he became involved with Hitler and all the other stuff that was going on, we see that he completely spelled out his name. He had a great separation from his family name, but he articulated all of the letters. He then became that self-important person we just talked about by giving himself just his last name as his signature. So it says D, the last set of signature belonging to Benito Mussolini, Italian fascist dictator and ally of Hitler in World War II. The first one was written before he was well known. Notice the use of both names. The next, after his march on Rome, which will be this one, we see now he has taken that self-important attitude about the family and what they're doing. He said, and the final one, when his power and influence affected the lives of millions. Look at it. Oh my gosh. Not only is it extremely angular, which is almost an aggressive and angry nature, but it's bigger than life in comparison to his other different signatures.
He was a school teacher, you know that, before he became a dictator. Is that
no. He's going to teach you a lesson.
Exactly. He worked on kids. He thought he'd try it on everybody.
Right?
Right.
All right. So I know that last week, well, it's been a couple weeks since we looked at this slide, but I wanted to remake the connection between what I believe is the shot victims 21 in the woods, dies April, Monticello, near Monticello card, which many people have tried to attribute the Monticello card to some girls that were killed. A girl named April, I believe, that was killed in the woods, though someone else was convicted for this crime. So I don't know why they're still trying to pin it on somebody who was already convicted unless they have information that would suggest this individual was declaring his innocence when he was convicted, and it's just another fall guy that went down for Jack. But I think it has to do with the DC Freeway Phantom stuff, because as I had notated before, Monticello is down here, Joint Base Andrews, which is a military base, is right here in the Washington area. And then Albany, New York is another one of the areas that we are going to see this serial killer or the Zodiac author at least take credit for crimes. So being on this side and so close to Monticello, we also have the crossover jurisdiction murders between the Maryland and Washington, D.C. So he's picking, victims up in Washington and killing them and leaving them in Maryland, or vice versa in the DC Freeway Phantom stuff. So that was just a quick catch up before we go into some of the murders. On July 8th, 1971, we had Darlenia Denise Johnson. She is the second victim of the DC Freeway Phantom. Her body was found 15 feet from where Carol Sparks was found near Andrew Air Force Base. Again, Air Force Base. We know Jack has access to all of these bases. She was 16 years old, kidnapped from the same street as Carol, body dumped 15 feet from the same location as Carol, and she was strangled to death. So in our last one, I believe, let me just run back real quick. I want you guys to also note the by knife, by rope, by fire, by gun, because when we go through these, let's see. This one was shot behind her left ear, Gloria South. Brenda Jones was shot in the head. Oh, that's Galveston, so that's I-45. But the Albany Medical Center in New York was a shot to the head. Let's see here. Who else? Oh, maybe I haven't gotten to her yet. And that one is there. Niece. Oh, man, I'm way back. Betty now, yeah, I think the other one was either strangled or shot as well. But we're seeing the multiple MO in these murders that is described in the Halloween card in October of 1970. So then it was on to July 13th, 1971, Angela Denise Barnes in Waldorf, Maryland, 14 years old, shot to death, abducted from Southeast Washington, dumped Waldorf, Maryland. On July 27th, 1971, Brenda Crockett on the underpass on US Highway 50, which is not here in California, guys. It's over there. So this is another DC Freeway Phantom. She was 10 years old, raped and strangled, scarf found knotted around her neck. There was a phone call from Brenda where she indicated that she had been given a ride with a white man, and another where she indicates she is at the white man's house. Her body was found July 28th, 1971. Now, if you know the backstory on this, they tried to pin these murders on a black man, I believe. Wait a minute. Is this the... I feel like this is something. So, this is actually runs. Let's see. Nope. Okay. So yes, this girl, after being kidnapped, indicated she was at a white man's house, but the police department believed that they were misgivings that the suspect asked Brenda to portray, and that was to stir suspicion away from a black male suspect, for which I'm sure that Jack would actually want to make sure they had it correct, even if they didn't believe her. And I think that she would likely have had some stress in her voice or had been scared. I think that there would have been some indication that she was stressed if she's being told to lie, right? Like when she makes this phone call, she's only 10. It's not like she's an adult that can hold her emotions together.
Depends on what she knows what was going to happen to her.
Well, it's true that. Evidently, she was offered. I mean, I don't know how many black children would take a ride from a white man, stranger. I mean, who does that? It just seems.
Well, if they've got handlers, if she's got parents that are, or guardians that are nefarious, it happens.
Right. That's true. So on August 4th, 1971, we have Rhonda Renee Johnson and Sharon Lynn Shaw at Taylor Lake. They're hitchhiking from Clear Lake to Galveston and went missing. So we have these connections now, even from California, the hitchhikers and Galveston, which is Clear Lake is where the NOHV, where the Saul that Harriet describes is where Donna Lass's body was dumped. So the head was dumped in one place. She says it was dumped in the Lower Lake area, which is Clear Lake. So now we have this cross connection coming back and forth. So Jack comes back to California at this point, and on August 20th, 1971, we have the murder of Linda Dudley in San Francisco. Now, these are prostitutes. He hadn't shown any affinity towards prostitutes at this point, but and there's nothing to. Again, I put it in here because it's an unsolved murder, not necessarily because I'm absolutely saying that the Zodiac did this. So just remember that. The article on Linda Dudley says knifed body of a prostitute. The new body of 22-year-old prostitute who was stabbed to death was discovered yesterday in the underbrush of Lake Merced Drive. The badly decomposed body of Linda Susan Dudley of 865 Hayes Street was found at 10:45 a.m. by a municipal water department employee. Get that waterway, relation, which we see so often with the Zodiac.
How do they know she's a prostitute?
Somebody must have told him, right? I mean, it says a friend. A friend. Here you go. Okay. A friend reported her as missing on August 22nd. However, the coroner's office said she may have died before then. She had been arrested several times in the past year on prostitution charges.
Okay, that's how they know.
Go ahead, Terry.
Can you give me a real quick recap as to why you believe these are real? Is it strictly via period solves that you have these for?
No, these are all the unsolved murders that I found back in 2013 as I was going through the years and events of unsolved murders. And anytime some was brought up, I would throw them into the presentation if they look like they could fit the bill for the Zodiac.
Yeah, fit the bill, but we don't have any documents from Jack on these? Okay.
No. Not that I know of. And Harriet may have more solves. I know she has more names named than I do know. So I'm not sure.
It does have some uncanny keywords, but okay.
August is also supposed to be the time frame in which I believe Dennis states that he's meeting Nora in South Lake Tahoe. So, but he is still back and forth, as we see, to Stevens Creek all the way through 1972, which confirms Dennis's theory that, or not theory, but the story that Jack had his photography studio in the basement of his house that he had in San Jose. So we know that he kept that house until 1972, at least based on Dennis's recollection. So now it says body in San Francisco Lake identified. Again, this is that waterway dump. So this is why it probably got included in here, Terry B. As we know, we're going to step into D.B. Cooper here. And one of the things one of the articles he used was a Playboy magazine with a woman submerged underwater who looked like she basically was dead. So it says a young woman whose nude body was found near Lake Merced in San Francisco yesterday was identified later in the day as a 22-year-old Linda Dudley. The coroner's office said that the woman, whose address was unknown, had 3 chest wounds, apparently inflicted by a knife, and died probably 4 or 5 days ago. A city employee spotted her partly decomposed body in brushy undergrowth on the south shore of the lake. Police said they had no suspects and have not determined a motive for the killing. But then these ones don't get highly researched.
So the prostitute was found Lake Merced Boulevard, and she was found.
Well, I think that they might. It said Lake Merced Drive, and maybe Lake Merced Drive runs Lake Merced.
So that's kind of a link. That's kind of interesting link that Lake Merced is in both locations of both dead bodies.
Well, we have the Edwards and Dominguez in early 60s down in the Santa Barbara area that was shot on the beach, right? And we also have the Lake Berryessa murders where they were stabbed. So it is following that waterway, either dump or murder scene. So I think it is interesting to note that the FBI looked at a solve from an individual, even though they did not find it to be credible. They did note that there happened to be a double symbol used for the letters J and K. And since my suspect is Jack, I thought I would bring this up. So anytime I find something in the solves that the FBI has confirmed or noticed, I like to bring it up, especially if it actually points out, because JK by itself phonetically is Jack. So I did say on August 1971, Jack meets Nora Kaufman, mother of Dennis, Mary and Denise Kaufman. It's questionable as to the real meeting date, but definitely after the March 22, 1971 sought victim 12 card per Dennis. And he keeps his home, like I said, until 1972. Jack begins working for South Lake Tahoe Linen Company as a mechanic, and this is where he meets Nora. Jack is known to scout out his next residence months in advance by himself before moving or bringing the family with him. So this is one of those things where him coming to South Lake Tahoe, scouting out a place, scouting out work, meeting a new family is just the precursor to him having left the Bay Area yet. So he's still in the Bay Area at this point as well. I'm sorry. He's basically dual places. I think the goal is to commit a murder before he moves into that area, giving things time to calm down while he goes back home to prepare to move. Then we see more murders while he is there, depending on his given situation, and ultimately one last murder as he's exiting. And what I really meant by that is that every time he goes to scout out a place, he commits a murder in my mind, and then he comes back to California, let's say, and while all of the hubbub and all the investigations are going on and they can't find this ghost, it's because he's not even in that state. And when he moves back to that state with the family, he now looks like a family man who just came here for the first time. And then we see a couple more murders, and then we always see an exit murder. They're typically a 10 to 11 month time span in which these serial killing sprees occur, as we're going to see with the DC Freeway Phantom. Again, 10, 11 months, crossing of jurisdictions. Everything kind of matches that MO. Dennis Kaufman wrote in his book, my mother was working for Tahoe City Linen when she met Jack. He was a mechanic for their trucks. I met Jack when I was 5 years old. I walked out in the living room one day and he was sitting there with his arm around my mother. The first thing I said to him was, "Get your arm off my mom." He told me, "You and I need to be introduced." He took me in the bedroom and paddled my ass. He told me that he didn't want to be here any more than I wanted him there, but that was just how it had to be. So I would just have to accept it. I never understood why he told me that until now. So that is basically the onset of when Dennis started to realize why Jack ended up in their life, because he believed he was hiding or absconding from something else.
Interesting.
So on September 17th, 1971, divorce papers are filed by Doris. She states that the date of separation is April 1st, 1971, which coincides with the March 22nd events of Danny going to CYA and Jack getting put on probation. And I think that she ultimately blamed Jack for her son going to CYA. So we end up seeing a split between them at this point. She had said they actually separated in 68 while in Nyack. So I'm starting to wonder whether or not that separation was complete or if she was still kind of, bouncing back and forth to him, because in these papers, it does not indicate 1968 when she was in Nyack. So let's see. Her attorney was in San Jose, California. Jack is very familiar with it and shows they were back in the San Jose area at the time that this divorce was being put through. I did find an oddity, though, because the September 1971 divorce should have been final between Jack and Doris. I'm guessing, 6 months after the petition, Nolan?
Yeah, usually it could take longer, but yeah, generally 6 months.
Could they backdate it since she said separation was April 1st, 1971?
You can go non-pro-tunc, but it can't go prior to the filing of the divorce papers.
Okay. So when she filed this, then everything, if they granted it immediately, it would be done 6 months from now, right?
Right.
So
Finally.
That's the oddity, because I also found an additional case in Santa Clara. Let's see, this one is filed in Santa Clara. Wait, September 71. This is done in San Jose. And then in Santa Clara on March 1970. Oh, I'm sorry. Should have been final in Santa Clara by March 1972. But that's weird because the records also show a second divorce on February 4th of 1981 in a new case with Doris. Can you tell me what might have went wrong there?
Typo.
Do they reconcile and get divorced again? That's
no,
weird.
Because he's with Nora. He's with Nora in 71. So he's literally he's a cheater, because we know that he got with Doris.
Maybe they never completed the paperwork to finalize their divorce. Even though it was filed in 71, sometimes people don't complete the paperwork.
Well, and we do see a divorce, or not a divorce, but basically an annulment of Nora and Jack's marriage in the 80s. And then they remarry again. I thought they divorced because of the trouble he got into. I think that one was where he did the assault with a deadly weapon. And obviously her separating herself from him at that point, she could take all the assets with him, so they couldn't be personally sued, was my guess.
One ground for an annulment is if you're technically still married to someone else.
And evidently he was, based on the paperwork I found.
Interesting.
Right? So trigger points, April. April is the Monticello card, guys. Keep April in mind. April dies, right? So April, he's got this triggering point. His wife is divorcing him, and we see a new load of activity that begins to occur. So now Jack has also gone to Texas after November 15th, 1971, which is basically based on pictures and photographs that I had seen. And the Zodiac Killer actually goes silent. We don't hear anything from him. There isn't any communications. There isn't any killings that we would attribute to him. But we do have the October 1st, 1971, Nino Moshia Yates murder on Pennsylvania Avenue in Prince George County, Maryland, near Andrews Air Force Base. Once again, she's 12 years old, raped and strangled, abducted from Northeast Washington, and dumped like the others in Prince George, Maryland. And then we see that Jack is coming back through Texas again, in my mind. On October 28th, 1971, we have Gloria Ann Gonzalez at Addicks Reservoir, which is in Texas. She's 19 years old. Her bones are found mixed in with Colette Wilson's bones. So now we have a mixing of body parts that's showing bisection, which we know lipstick, Black Dahlia, and a few other cases that we're going to see here. Also the I-45 and the League City Field of Stars. We'll get to that one. It's too far off. Anyways, we started to see where hands of one victim were buried in a grave with another body. So we got an extra set of hands, or we've got an extra skull, or we've got some extra feet. Either way, it shows that the murderer is returning to the scene where he's buried previous bodies and continues to bury other individuals with those bodies. Let's see. Suspect also backtracked their travel route, like in another one of these cases, which is something that I noticed. And then on November 2nd, 1971, there was found Adele Margaret Crabtree in Conroe, Texas. She was 16 years old, a runaway from Ohio that was shot to death. November 7th, 1971, Linda Faye Sutherland was found in a ditch, Rural Road in Pearland. She was a key punch operator. So we talked a little bit about the key punch, didn't we, Terry?
Yes. And as it might compare to IBM punch cards of the day.
Right.
Might have been his message, because I think he made a lot of linkages to computer technology at that time.
Right.
The PAL program for one thing, and
didn't Jack work for IBM at one point?
I think he was in all the technologies.
He was in all the technology. He actually even knew how to write code. He would even instruct in some of the paperwork I've got. He would instruct the IT guy on what he's done, what code he's ran, or what troubleshooting he's done, and hadn't been able to figure out the problem. So he would forward it on to the IT specialist. But you could see that he has knowledge of this stuff.
I know you want us to avoid the future subjects we're going to go over, but when we get to OCC case, they made the comment that he was familiar with handling bodies, which made him very unique and dangerous.
Yeah,
that he was handling
and dangerous. Bodies. Yes. So let's see.
People kill somebody, they leave them lay, or they ditch them, but he was actually handling these bodies, and so you're seeing that with this here also. This is someone that's comfortable with handling bodies and body parts and things like that.
Right. So Linda Faye Sutherland was a key punch operator or a bartender. I'm not sure, but we do trace that stuff back, the key punch operator, to Zodiac Letterman General Hospital, the Sacramento Sutter Memorial, and the DC Albany Medical Center. So we do see these different And I think the key punch operator had something to do with the nurse. Maybe that's why I have this lined up with all of the nurses and medical situation. She was actually struck in the head and tossed over a low bridge into a ditch while still alive. The killer stood on bridge and shot her 4 times with a shotgun. And didn't you say that the 30-30 was a shotgun or a high-powered rifle? Not a shotgun, right?
Yes. Yeah, and most commonly in the Model 94 Winchester type, which looks like a, you see in all the Western movies, or a lot of the Western movies, the lever operated, just like the Rifleman. Those are different models in the 94. They're very similar in structure. But that was a very popular deer hunting rifle of the day, or bigger game, not huge. It was not the most powerful, but it was a pretty powerful weapon.
So what, you could go probably like deer, elk.
Yeah, you might be able, there might be shot loads for it. I meant to ask a friend of mine that's more of an expert. They might have made a shot load that you could put in it. I know there were shotguns you could put slugs in and use them the same way.
Right. And I do believe there are some things that you can cross connect. And I did do a podcast on wrapping the bullets so that they could actually fit and fire from a larger caliber weapon.
Yeah, they call it a sabot. A sabot. Like
sabot.
Sabot, right? You can fool the caliber. Or there's some of that talk with the Oswald Kennedy thing that there was a sabot used. I don't know. I haven't done the deep dive on that, but
I think that's where I actually cover it at, is the possibility of being able to shoot a 9mm out of a 38 or a 38 out of a 22 out of one of those. You know what I mean?
Untraceable too.
Exactly. Yeah, because the rifling wouldn't occur on the bullet because it was too small to actually travel, and the paper would actually buffer it on its way out of the muzzle.
Yeah, plastic usually. The sabots are made of. Later, they're made out of plastic. But.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, but he's an old school boy. He knows how to be. I would bet that Jack was such an avid hunter that if he ran out of any particular type of ammunition, that he's kind of like MacGyver and could on the spot devise just about anything he wanted to if he wanted to shoot a gun.
I would think so. I think him and his associates were trained assassins.
Right. And that means that they would know how to do MacGyver things for sure.
But then they do these killings to make it look like it's a kook instead,
Right.
Well, he is a kook, but you know what I'm saying.
Yes, he is.
Something other than what it is, Things are not. It was like John Mark Carr. One of his sound bites was, "Things are not what they seem," and that fits this guy. Things are not what they seem.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I can't wait to get to John Mark Carr. I think that's how me and Terry actually bonded, was over the emails from him and that Michael. What was he, an investigative reporter or something?
Yeah, those are long-winded. Holy cow, he did a lot of those.
Oh my God.
You can definitely see right when Jack dies, the second person posting on those went away. He was gone.
Exactly.
We believe it was Jack because John Mark Carr was really buttoned down with what he'd write, and this other guy was being really flippant and using strange words like electrocardiogram and things like that. So there's definitely 3 people involved, 3 people in all, at least involved in those
emails.
Things. Yeah, emails. When it comes to
that. I think John Mark Carr forwarded on the anthrax letters that were mailed out of Malaysia and Thailand. When he absconded from the United States and went to those locations, he then pursued the persona of the Zodiac Killer to make it look like the Zodiac Killer had left the country. That's just my theory. But so back to the murders. Back in Galveston, we have on November 9th, 1971, Allison Craven. She's a Galveston abduction, and the body is dumped in 2 locations. So now we have a bifurcation of the body again. Yep. 3 months later, found some of her arm bones, hand bones, and teeth in a nearby field. Now, I wanted to point that out because that means that Harriet solved where she believes that Donna Lass's teeth were missing and separated from her skull, that we're now seeing this done in an active murder in Texas.
Right.
So the rest
and I'm working on getting to the bottom of that riddle. I've already contacted the Sacramento Bee journalist, and my next step is to contact the Placer County Sheriff.
Nice.
Yeah.
So now we see another MO that is kind of fitting what we have going on if we can confirm that Donna Lass's teeth were removed from her skull. The rest of Allison Craven's body was found several miles away in a field near Pearland, Texas, some 20 miles north of Galveston. So we again have jurisdiction crossover. This would indicate the bisection, like Susan Degnan, Elizabeth Short, Rogers couple, Colette Wilson, and many other victims. On November 11th, 1971, we had Debbie Ackerman and Maria Johnson. Galveston abduction once again. Bodies dumped in 2 locations once again. The bodies were found 10 miles north of Galveston in Turner's Bayou, which is a waterway reference. Both girls were shot twice. The hands and feet had been bound, like many of these cases, partially clothed. I question marked accepting a ride from a green pickup truck on 11/15/1971. I'm questioning it because I don't know if the information is correct. We've seen many different reportings in even just Sherry Joe Bates' Volkswagen. You know, what color was it? People will argue it was yellow, it was green. Like, well, what do we really know, folks? So go ahead.
Interesting.
Right. So I said, this makes no sense if their bodies were discovered on the 15th. If they were abducted on the 15th and their bodies are found, skulls found in a different location than their bodies. The skulls were found where a torso of another victim was found, but the torso was not found to be either of the girls. So the torso was thought to be that of Philip Manning, but he was later found to be alive, and a man was convicted of his murder and died in prison.
Oh, yeah. Nice. Yeah, that's about typical, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Criminal justice system at work. Yeah.
Well, and if anybody remembers the Degnan stuff, like you said, the suspect is very comfortable with handling body parts. Susan Degnan's body was dumped in random storm drains leading away from the basement where she was bisected all the way to the last body dump in near the train tracks, which we know that Jack traveled to get around.
To a little girl.
And that's the lipstick murder, right, Degnan?
Yes. The lipstick murders were really, to me, a compilation of what I would call easy victims. You have a child and you have older women. Yeah. He doesn't move into the stronger, more fit people and males until into the serial killing spree, you know?
Yeah. My thesis or theory on that is there's more than one person involved.
Absolutely. Well, and the guy that I was telling you about that has this 100 and some, photographic slides of the victims that look like they're being stalked, and he believes that photographer is the Zodiac, has indicated that he also believes that the lipstick killings and the Black Dahlia and the Zodiac, again, are all one perpetrator. He also thinks that his suspect, who was born in 1912, so I'll give him that person is old enough, but that person died in 1991. So I got kind of lost in his projections because I believe that the Zodiac wrote the anthrax letters. And I believe that persona was carried on through John Mark Carr overseas and continued. So we know that the Zodiac author was alive longer than 1991. So but was this guy a part of the group? Because he believes that this person could also be tracked back to the Ohio torso murders and the Mad Butcher murders, which I studied a little bit about that on the lipstick killing case. What's that?
Wrong. That guy's wrong about that. I've studied that. The torso murders would have been, Jack wouldn't have been old enough for that.
No. He's not saying Jack was. He's saying his suspect. And maybe when he told me where his suspect was from, Chicago, had been in all the locations, South Lake Tahoe, the Bay Area, he seemed to be following the same routes Jack was at. And I wondered, is he Libra? Is he one of the other people involved in this thing? Because yeah.
Did he give you a name?
He refused to give me a name, and I hate it when people do that because if you're trying to find the truth, you're not going to cut off the fraud expert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he wouldn't even provide me the handwriting in a way that I could work with it, even though I offered to put together a presentation for him on the handwriting. So I don't know if I'll hear from him again. Either way, he is hot to trot. He's only been in these cases for 16 months, and he says he's going to cut the Achilles tendon of this case, and he's going to solve it. I said, there you go.
Right.
He might be a plant.
Yeah, exactly. He's sending me professionally made JPEGs of PowerPoint presentations, which I often see that type of formulation in the camps that are trying to put things out against me. I mean, in fact, when I looked at them, they were just so astoundingly similar to other PowerPoint presentations that were bashing me. I was a little offended, and I kind of snapped at him. I was like, I'm not here for your song and dance. I don't want to see what you put together in a presentation. You asked me to work with the handwriting. I'm a very busy person. If you can't just submit the handwriting to me in a efficient manner so that I can work with it, then you're wasting my time. Leave me alone.
Right.
Boom, done.
Let's see. That goes on all the time.
Right.
All the time. And the more you solve, you can expect more of that sort of flack. You really can. The more that you uncover, the more people realize what you've uncovered, you can expect a lot more of that.
Yeah, it's like the Kennedy assassination.
Yeah, it's like
more danger you're in.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, he made mention to a connection as well to JFK. He does not know half of what he thinks he knows, but he seemed to be on point, which was strange. So I said, do you realize that the Zodiac Killer wrote a communication in regards to the JFK happenings, right? And he was like, what? So he's so far behind the times, but he thinks he's got it solved. And then, of course, he's complaining that he can't get anybody to listen. Well, there's a reason for that.
Yes. Yeah.
But what I do see, there is a potential for him being picked up by somebody and them using this guy as a false suspect because he died in 1991 and can't be connected to the anthrax mailings. And that's where I think they have drawn short and stopped trying to solve this, because making that connection shows us what the Zodiac was. Highly politically involved, highly crisis antagonist. Yes.
Yeah.
So my thoughts now on that, the torso was that of one of the girls, but how can that be if they found both the girls' bodies floating in the Turner Bayou? So I'm a little concerned about this Debbie Ackerman and Maria Johnson thing when the information is a little bit skewed. But we do also know that there were body parts found in graves back here in California that did not belong to other victims in those same graves. So we're seeing the same pattern of using the same grave for multiple body parts.
That's gross.
From different people. It's insane.
Yeah.
Now, this is where I get my kicks, because I found this in Jack's stuff. So it's an official receipt for reinstatement from Kansas City, Kansas, you guys. Ask me what the date is when he's there.
71.
November 12th, 1971. Jack is reintroducing himself, and he's listed as a mechanic. Let's see. Jack's reinstatement is in Kansas City, Kansas, local number 10, as a mechanic, which confirms Dennis's story that he is becoming a mechanic at South Lake Tahoe. It says Jack entered local union 529, registration number 1350509 from Tulsa, Oklahoma, that's where he met Letha, his first wife, in July 24th of 1952 at age 24. And then in the 1968 Deer draft board numbers, we had an ID number, which I thought was relatively similar to Jack's military's ID. I highly doubt that this individual was ever going to give an accurate number. And I did the research on this number. It is far too long to be anything that the military used at that point in time. But we could see how consistent. We got a 3058, and Jack's military ID is 358. 8279. So we had.
Was it one of the victims in one of the recent slides killed on November 15th, 71? Just 3 days after.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. He's right there in this area. He's on that side of the United States at this point. So he's in Kansas City reapplying for his. It says November 12th, 1971. Reapplying for his membership into the union. And that's the International Brotherhood of Boilers.
He still had a residence in San Jose too, but he was scouting out Tahoe. So he really gets around.
Yes.
But
I think this is his red herring that puts him on that side and available for these other murders I'm discussing in Texas and DC. Period.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah, he was a jack of all trades, wasn't he? Lots of stuff.
Yeah. I bet you he loved that
November
one.
15th. Yep, Brenda Woodward.
Yep. 3 days later, 3 days later, the last murder, I believe. Let's see.
Brenda
Denise.
Black.
What's that?
I'm surprised he's killing black, so it's not usually been his MO, but he says
his MO changes. He says his MO changes. And in his finale letter, the only people he said he didn't kill in the 1980 series was Hispanics and Chinese. So he never said no blacks or African Americans. And we know that the Atlanta, Georgia child killer was a series of black male boys. So we've got this series of black female girls, and then some female girls, and then a series.
They had to get their quota on one of the Zodiac documents.
Right.
Using the N-word, that they had to get their quota. So.
Exactly. Now, on November 15th, 1971, Brenda Denise Woodward was found on the access ramp to Highway 202. She was stabbed and strangled. It was a grassy area, as all the 1971 murders, with the exception of the waterway dump sites. A coat had been placed over her with a note that was found inside of it. I don't know whose coat. They didn't allude to whether it was hers, or I also thought and was thinking about that watch in Sherry Joe Bates, where it might have come from the Swindles and he planted it at the next crime scene to cross-connect. What if he was also laying out pieces of clothing from other murders? So maybe they should be looking at these clothings and seeing if they can match them back to another individual. So it says the murders stop after this letter below until February of 1972. There's no Zodiac.
Was this in the DC area, the Highway 202? Is that?
You do have a document.
Okay.
Yes, this is the DC.
Right there.
Okay.
I do. So the murders stop after the letter that's found in this jacket. There's no Zodiac, there's no I-45, there's no New York, and there's no DC murders occurring. There's nothing that occurs after this murder that I can tell, other than the DB Cooper caper, until February of 1972. So DB Cooper, aka Zodiac Jack, may very well have caught. This is another one of my theories, you guys, because we do see that the DB Cooper occurred in November. That the flight 305 that left out of Tacoma, Washington, originates in Washington D.C. You guys,
look at the word catch.
Really?
Right,
and it was all the way from Tacoma to Reno, or where?
Hold on, you guys. I can't hear you. Hold on.
Sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Terry.
Nolan, I just real quickly. There's his signature right on the word catch with that H at the end. That's the combination JT.
Okay, we're not there yet. We're not to the letter yet. What did you have to say, Nolan?
Okay, the flight, the DB Cooper flight, it was from Tacoma to Reno, or Tacoma to where?
But the origination of that Northwest
right.
Orient flight originated by my research from Washington, D.C. So it went from Washington, D.C. What's that?
That particular plane. So did it fly into Seattle first, or went straight to Tacoma?
No, I think they flew over Tacoma.
Okay.
I don't know. Right. We haven't got to DB Cooper yet. I'm not up to date on that. I haven't seen it in a while. I just know that I took note to the fact that this last murder, and there wasn't another murder coming out of any of these 4 different serial killing sprees until they pick back up in February of 72, but that the flight 305 in the DB Cooper case actually originates from Washington, D.C., where this last murder occurs, and then back to the western side of the U.S., pre-planning all along the way is my guess. So I wanted to research previous flight manifests for passengers like Jack Terrence. He may not have used an alias when he took that flight from DC to Seattle. And then that's where he purchases his next ticket underneath the alias. So I wanted to see that. And then he checks in as Dan Cooper in Spokane, Washington. So that's where he picks up the flight at.
When we get to that subject, man, does that subject have a lot of points to make. Holy cow.
So I only got 1 minute left. I feel like I'm you guys, I'm going to read this letter real quick and we'll need to sign off. But the note left in this jacket says, "This is tantamount to my insensitivity to people, especially women. I will admit the others when you catch me if you can. Freeway Phantom." That is Zodiac 101.
Jack.
I got goosebumps, you guys. All right. Well, we're going to have to go into the rest of that this next week. We did not quite make it to the Zodiac or to the DB Cooper like I'd hoped, but we can cover this letter next week if you'd like to join us, Terry, and we'll go from there.
Absolutely. I do like that you got that document, though. That's a signature item. I mean, that's putting a Zorro right there.
He even hyphenates Freeway. Zodiac is the biggest hyphenator ever.
Catch me if you can. The whole works. It's him.
It's there. All right, you guys, thank you so much for being, I have to sign off, but thank you guys so much for being here. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next week.
Absolutely.
We'll talk to you later. Bye.
You bet.
Oh,